Hello and welcome to the first video in our new unit on linear equations. The first one is going to be dealing with our slope-intercept form. So first thing we're going to do is a little investigation on that. But just to go back to what we did in our last unit, we were dealing with functions and relations, and a lot of the stuff that was in that unit we're going to use in this unit as well. So things like the slope is definitely going to be used in this a lot. So slope-intercept form, what that is going to be something that looks like this: y equals mx plus b, where those two values of m and b, those are going to be very, very important. So what we're going to do first is a little investigation and see just what those two values actually do. So I've got pulled up here the little investigate that we're going to do. So we currently have the function equaling 0. So you could have f equaling 0, or you could also have this written y equals 0. Remember, f of x and y, they mean the same thing. So really this is just y equals 0. Now if I change different values in here, if I go plus or minus, that's going to change this function. So let's maybe start by changing the m. So now in front of the x there is a 1. And now if I'd maybe click another one, now it's a 2. And you can see what it's doing to the graph over here. It seems like the higher that number is, the steeper the line is getting. So that number there in front of the x, it has something to do with how steep it is. So all of these slopes that we have here in our last unit, we called those positive slopes because they go upwards. If I would go down to the negative, you can see my slope is now negative. It's going down, and that's because this is negative. So the more negative it is, the more steeper it is. So let's just set it back to 1 here, and let's see what this c value, or in ours we called it the b value, so we're going to be changing that around. So let's maybe go to a plus 1, and you can see it's moved the graph up. Plus 2, plus 3, plus 4. So now we're up at 4. So you can see that this value, what it does, whenever you have something there at the end, it moves it up and down. Okay, so the value in front of the x has to deal with the slope, and then the value that's by itself at the end, the constant value, that moves it up and down, and we're going to have a word that goes with that. So let's go back to our notes. So just looking at this y equals mx plus b, the m there, that is going to deal with the slope. And remember, slope was just the rise over the run. And then the b value here at the end, that is a constant value. It's just a number. And that is going to be the y-intercept. And that's where it crosses the y-axis. So that's this first definition we got here. So it says the y-intercept, it is the y-coordinate of the point where a line or curve crosses the y-axis. And then it says the value of y when x equals 0. So whenever x equals 0, that's what the y-intercept is going to be. So I'll show you that visually what it looks like. I'm just going to draw a quick graph. So I've got my graph there. Now on this side, any number over here, that is the negative x side. Any number over on this side, that is the positive x. But right in the middle here, that is when x is equal to 0. It's neither positive or negative. And that is where your y-intercept is going to be. So if you had a graph looking something like this, I'll just draw a straight line, and it crosses right there, that point right there, that would be your y-intercept. And it occurs where x equals 0. It's just right in the middle. So now that we know what y-intercept is, we're going to look at our slope-intercept form. We've kind of seen that up here. But slope-intercept form is the equation of a line in the form y equals mx plus b. And again, the m is for slope, and the b, that is for the y-intercept. So we're already into our first example here. It says find the slope and y-intercept of the line and write the equation in the slope-intercept form. So we have our two different lines here. We're going to do the left one first. So what I'm going to do is I am going to first try to find the y-intercept. Usually that's the easiest. So the y-intercept is right where it crosses this y-axis. So I can see that is at the point 0 and 1. So let's just write that down here. So our y-intercept is at 0 and 1. So that is going to tell me that in my slope-intercept form, the b value is going to be this number right here. It's a 1. So when I go to do that slope-intercept form, b is a 1. Now to get the slope, this is a little bit harder, but it's still not too bad. What you need to do is go from one exact point to another exact point where it crosses perfectly on your graph. So I see there's another point right here. So I'm going to move from my first point to my second point. And to do that, I'm going to have to go down 1, 2. So that's down 2. And I'm going to have to go over to the right 1, 2, 3. So that right there is what's going to give us our slope. Because if you recall from our last unit, slope, which we use the letter m, that was our rise over our run. So in this case, the rise was actually a fall of 2, so negative 2. And then our run was 3. So we got negative 2 over 3. And then to write this in slope-intercept form, it just is going to plug into y equals mx plus b, where I now know what the m and what the b is. So that is going to be y equals, the m is negative 2 over 3. So I write that in. And then the b we set up top here, that was a 1. So I just put the plus 1. So there's our slope-intercept form. For this one on the right here now, if you wanted to pause the video here and try to do this one on your own, you could do that. So the steps, just like the first one, I want to start with my y-intercept because that's going to be the easiest. Our y-intercept is going to occur at right here where it crosses. So that is at the point 0 and negative 4. So let's write that down. It's at 0 and negative 4. And then that's going to tell me that the b value in my slope-intercept form is that number right there. It is a negative 4. So I got my y-intercept. Then I can find my slope, and that's m. So it's going to be the rise over the run. And I just got to find that on my graph. So I got to go from one perfect point to another perfect point. Now this isn't perfect, that isn't perfect, that one's not quite perfect. We got to get all the way up to here for it to perfectly cross. So that is our next perfect point. So I'm just going to put another point there. And then we're going to count our rise and our run. So we had to rise 1, 2, 3 up. So there's our rise. And then our run is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 over. So our rise is 3. And then our run is 5. And then to get my slope-intercept form, it's just y equals mx plus b, and I now know what m and b are. So this is going to give us y equals 3/5 was our m, and then don't forget the x, plus b, and b was a negative 4. Now a plus and a minus, that's just going to be a minus. So I'm going to simplify that, and this is going to give me just minus 4. So with that one complete, we can move to our next thing here, and this is going to deal with graphing. So now we're going to be given the equation and we are going to have to graph it. So let's look at the left one on the first there. So we have y equals 2 over 3x plus 3. And remember our form, it's y equals mx plus b. So this number right here, that is the m. So I'm going to put m is equal to 2 over 3. So that's our rise over our run. So we're going to rise 2 and we're going to run 3. And then the b value, that's the y-intercept, that is just a 3. Okay, so that is our y-intercept. So let's plot our y-intercept first. Always plot your y-intercept first. So I'm just going to put that here on the side. Plot y-intercept first. These steps are actually the same as what we did in our last unit. Our first step was always plot the point, and then after we're going to use our slope to get to the next point. So let's plot that point. It's going to be at 3 right there. And then the second step, what you want to do is use your slope and move your slope from the first point. So we're going to use slope to get to the next point. So I'm going to rise 2, go up 1, 2, and then I'm going to run 3. 1, 2, 3. And you always run to the right. Okay, so there's our next point. And now that you have those, you can take your ruler, set your ruler on, and draw a line through your points. Make sure you're always using a ruler. So I've drawn my line, and then just make sure at the end of your line, put your arrows to show that it just keeps going and going and going. So the one on the right now, if you want to pause the video and try to do that one on your own, you can do that now. So with this one, I can see the number there in front of the x, that's the m, that's our slope. So we are going to rise -3. So I'm putting the negative up with this 3, and then I'm going to run 5. And our last value here at the end, that -1, that is our y-intercept. So again, first step, plot the y-intercept. So we're down here at -1. And then I'm going to use my slope to get the next point. So I'm going to rise -3, so that's actually going down 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to run 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that gets me to my next point. And then again, you can set your ruler on there and then draw your line through your points. So I've drawn my line, now I just need my arrows at the end of my line. So that one is done. The last thing here we're going to look at now deals with technology. So if you have a graphing calculator, I can show you how you can check your answers to verify and make sure that you did it correctly. So we are actually going to check one of these up top here and make sure that we did it right. So I'm going to pull out my calculator. So I got my calculator out, and then what we're going to do, we're going to actually start here. I'm going to explain this part. You're going to click y equals, and that is right here. So I click y equals, and then you have some different graphs that you can put into here. So it doesn't matter which one you put, there's a bunch of different spots, but usually you just want to start at the first one. So I'm going to put in the first one that we had here, which was this one right here, y equals this stuff. So I'm going to put in -3/5. You can't go minus. If you put in a minus, it'll give you an error. So make sure you click the negative button. So -3/5, and then it was an x, and your x button is right here. Okay, so there's our x. It's normally a capital letter. R's in here are lowercase, but it doesn't matter. That's our variable term. So we got x, and then just go -1. Now to actually see our graph, I'm just going to go back down to our steps. What you need to do is you need to click graph. So the graph button is right here. You'll click graph, and it will draw our picture, so I can see that's what the graph is supposed to look like. And just comparing that to what we had here in blue, that looks quite similar to what we had. So that just kind of verifies and shows me that I probably did that one correct. Now sometimes your view might not be the greatest. It might be really zoomed out or really zoomed in, or it might not even show your graph. So this right here, standard window view, to get your standard window view, what you do is you click zoom, and then option number 6. So I'll show you that. Click zoom, and then the 6th option, depending on your calculator, if you've changed stuff, it might not be option number 6, but it should say zoom standard. And you can just click on that. For me, I'm just going to click number 6. And then what it does is it shows you 10 units high, 10 units low, 10 units to the right, and then 10 units to the left. If you ever wanted to change that, maybe you couldn't see your graph, you could click zoom, and then number 3 would zoom out. So you'd put number 3, click enter, and then it'll zoom out. So it's now your graph from like a farther distance, or you could even do zoom in. That's option number 2. Click enter, and then it zooms back in on your graph. So those are just some different options to kind of move or show your graph a little bit differently. So that was our last question. At the bottom here now, I'm just going to write up our textbook questions. So we got page 349. We're just doing 1 and 2. And then for number 3, you're just doing parts B, D, and F. 6 is just the parts A, C, E, and F. And then 7, 8, and 12.